Thank you everyone for coming back. Give yourself a big round of applause for being here. Thank you. Others will be kind of filtering in the room, but we have the majority of everyone here now. So we are about to start a very special session. It's one thing to be talking about, all these great stories of people that aren't even in the room, because it's still easy for us to have doubt that we'd be able to do it ourselves. We have an opportunity now to be able to actually hear from 4 changemakers from right here in Perth, who each of them are out surfing their own waves in different ways, where we're going to be able to hear a bit more about their story. I'm going to be in conversation with them. We're going to talk about what they're seeing is happening out there in the world today and where they see their businesses going as well. And you're going to have a chance to ask some questions before we complete this session as well. So this is going to be over the next 45 minutes or so that we're going to have this opportunity to do this. I am going to ask you to take out the sheet that you have that looks something like this, because it actually has our 4 changemakers on this side here as well. Some of you will be familiar with one or more of these changemakers already. And I'm going to just give you a bit of an overview of all 4. But what I'm going to do is, rather than going through in the order that they're in here now, I'm going to go through these in a particular order for a particular reason, right? And I'll share with you what that reason is afterwards. And I'm going to start with John Morrell. So John he's here based in Perth. He's married to Sandra Morrell, who is actually general manager of Entrepreneurs Institute as well. And he has been an entrepreneur pretty much his whole life. 30 years experiencing and owning, starting, selling, building, and purchasing businesses. And that's been everything from farm, liquor store, furniture business, window film company. And as you see here, his current company, Ready Mix Concrete, is actually the fastest growing pre-mixed concrete company in Western Australia. So he's at the moment on this growth, and I've chosen to start with him because, like some of you, I had some questions at lunch as well with our VIPs, are involved in companies that actually include physical assets. And you can't get more physical than pre-mixed concrete. And that also then gets connected in with the entire construction industry, what's happening with mining, what's happening in infrastructure. So these are things that all shift with the trends, and how you manage that is absolutely critical. So we have John here, and he's going to be joining us up here in a moment, which is awesome. We also then have Philippa, and Philippa Preston, who's the first, as you can see on this list, is in IT asset management with software optimization services. And as you can see here, she has been noted already in Australia as not once but twice Microsoft Partner of the Year finalist. And she has businesses that she supports on a lot of the things that we're talking about right now here, which is using IT as an asset. In fact, what she does is goes into large companies and shows them how she can turn it from a cost into a profit. And that is all about how you actually start thinking differently about the things that you currently have and how you're generating income from them. So she has got an entire background in that, and that's something which is going to be really interesting to hear here, because each of you should be looking at your IT assets fundamentally as a profit generator for you as well, just like we've been talking about this morning. So Philip is going to be joining us here. We then have Tennille Bentley. Tennille has been involved in all sorts of awesome things, and as you hear, the main thing she's focused on right now is digital media. 10 years in that, recognized by the Prime Minister with the Australian Leadership Award, which is only presented to 20 people here in Australia. Also awarded the Australian Financial Review Top 100 Australia's Women of Influence, State Finalist in Telstra Businesswoman of the Year. She's only put in here the top things, right? I mean, you can keep on going with all of Tennille's things. At the moment, what I really like about what she's doing is, while she has actually built her brand and digital media for large companies, very much like Philippa has as well, she's making this now accessible, as you're going to hear, through the program that she's running for entrepreneurs, for people that are just getting started as well. But it's using the same basic tools that work for large companies in terms of how you're building your entire digital media plan. So Tennille's going to be joining us on stage in a moment. And if you notice, John's business is very much about hard assets. Philippa's is fundamentally assets, which are still assets. I mean, like your IT assets, but they have a frequency where they actually shift and you have to replace them. So they're becoming more fluid. Tennille even more so with her services, becoming even more fluid. And then we have Nick Hallett coming up, where he is an educator and he is building his own personal brand, or has built his own personal brand as well, which is the most fluid of all. So we've actually got different levels of frequency when it comes to the waves that each of them is riding. And Nick is the CEO of Financial Freedom Institute, Money Masters Global, the Trillionaires, and iCoach Global. And you can see here, as an educator, he's out there and not only educating, but also walking the talk with what he does. I really like this part here, where he says, as you may already know, if you know Nick, that he's the very first flight qualified and certified civilian astronaut from Australia. and he is set to become the first ever Australian and private space explorer to rocket to outer space and live on Earth's only manned outpost in orbit, the International Space Station. So we have 4 pretty extraordinary, or very extraordinary people who are going to join us on stage right now. So can you please give all 4 of them a really big round of applause and come join me on stage here. Boy, girl, what do you think? Shall we do that? Nick, do you want to take center here? Yeah, go for it. All right, we're all good? Okay. All right. We have 2 microphones, so we'll kind of share along as we go as well. Nick, I'm going to start with you. And I would love to ask you a question about the fact, because this is happening more and more, you're actually bringing lifestyle and the things that you are passionate about. And for some very interesting reasons we'll go into tomorrow, there are a lot of the entrepreneurs in the world today, which includes Elon Musk, which includes Richard Branson, which includes Jeff Bezos, which includes Larry Page and others that all have got into the whole space side, right? What would you share with everyone here is the way you bring together your passion for space and the lifestyle that you actually want to live to actually allow you to do those things, together with the challenges or the opportunities in the education you do with entrepreneurs?
Definitely. Well, first of all, I'm a big advocate of life. Who loves life? Yes? Yeah. So probably the biggest thing is there's a certain paradigm, and a lot of us sort of believe we're living a life, but a lot of us are very subservient to the system which pretty much dominates our life. In relation to, most individuals are a product of academia, which is simply a factory assembly plant for the sole purpose of producing tax base. So for me, it's all about how much can I excavate my life's purpose and going out there and just live life my own terms and conditions. And in relation to space, a good friend of mine, and you actually mentioned him this morning, Peter Diamandis. Peter Diamandis is, he's by far probably the most profound, innovative individuals. He helped me a couple of years ago to form a contract with the Russian government, and there's been only 6 of us in history who have trained in Russia to become a certified qualified astronaut. So I'm a private civilian astronaut, and the whole thing, how that started was, at age 4, I sort of proclaimed to my parents I wanted to become an astronaut. And in my teenage years, I wasn't doing very good in academia. So I finished high school, finished my VCE, and I went to the United States to live. And around 2000, I actually approached NASA, but I didn't have any tertiary qualifications. But I approached Peter Diamandis, who helped me contract with the Russians in relation to brokering my passage into space. So for me, it was just, space was just that everlasting frontier, and it was just been that endless pursuit. And mind you, I've invested millions of dollars. There's been a lot of injuries along the way too, but ultimately it's, I've already been to edge of space, suborbit, and right now, within the next 24 months, there'll be a flight to the International Space Station as a private civilian, that is.
So how do you link that all with yeah, give him a round of applause first of all. So do you link that at all with what you do on the education side?
Definitely. Well, for me, it's the lifestyle. Whatever I do, it's a lot of us, we work in a JRB and we don't really live a life. And so for me, it's not so much the materialism. I've never been the materialistic side or elements in our lives kind of thing, because as we all know in life, you will never own anything. You're simply a caretaker. We all agree, right? So it's what you extract out of your life. So for me, education-wise, I teach individuals that there is no such thing as a 5-day work week, but there is something called a 5-day weekend, which basically means you're able to compress what you do in your life, but also you have the ability to be able to traverse the planet and still be able to generate income. So I sort of fuse that into my lifestyle, because my lifestyle, it's all about that. And I think it's time that we all sort of aerate and sort of ventilate ourselves to live that life that we all desire.
Okay. And Tanil, like a question I have for you, which is really around the shift that you're making right now from like the companies and the work you've been focusing at with the larger organizations through to the whole entrepreneurial side more. What kind of spurred that shift?
Interesting question. Yes, I have spent probably built in its time the largest social media agency at the time, and it was in under 2 years it was a multi-million-dollar agency, and I was teaching some of the largest corporations around the world.
Hang on, can I just pause you on that one?
Sure.
Okay, so so like, Yeah, I went up to space, went to the space station. Yeah, a couple of years, $2 million, like $1 million. Like, okay, so let's pause at that one for a moment. Like, how did you, without going into all the detail, for anyone who's going, no, you can't just do that. Okay. Like, when you started, did you already say, no, it's going to happen? Or was it like, I'm just going to do my, like, what was it that happened? And when was the moment when it became the $1 million business? What did you do?
Well, it all started off, I'm a firm believer in that it's about really harnessing and tuning in with yourself and really listening to yourself. So if someone told me 10 years ago I'd be doing digital media or social media, I probably would have laughed at them. They often ask me, how did I get in? Well, I've been building businesses for 10 years, but I was pretty much doing my charitable work full time, building my charity organisation. And then I ran out of money. I was broke, sitting in a cafe, crying with a notepad going, oh my God, I've done this the wrong way around. I went all heart, no head. Oh, well, this is not right. So I looked at it and I said, right, well, sometimes in the darkest moments come the brightest ideas. So I looked past the emotion and I tapped into what was behind there. So what I did was I looked at what was behind there and it was like, what have I done in my charitable organisation that I can turn into a business and put into the marketplace? By default, and coincidence if you like, I was doing this on social media. So I was sharing my journey through social media, and with the Global Good Foundation, I pretty much ran a whole global campaign through YouTube for 50,000 children, raising the awareness around domestic violence, and that it was done in a really fun...
So you actually became an expert in it
just by default because I was doing something I loved, and by default that became the income generator. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, what's the need in the marketplace was my very first question. What's the need in the marketplace? Is that at that point in time, organisations didn't understand social media. They didn't have the resources and they didn't have the know-how to do it. So I'm like, right, I'll give them someone that does that. I'll train up the person, create that. So then it began. I had no money.
On that point for everyone, I mean, really, this is like every one of us has got something right in front of us which we're taking for granted, which we're doing just because it's allowing us to, it's the thing we have to learn to do the thing we love. And it didn't feel like hard work learning it because it allowed us to make that successful. But then when you go, well, wait, if I can use this and exactly what Tanil was saying.
You've got to get out of your own way.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, who actually would find this of value? Then straight away, and that was in the
So it started, well, I couldn't afford shampoo, right? So I had no money. I had to call my mum to borrow money to buy shampoo. So that's how broke I was. And I thought, right, how am I going to turn this into a business? So I just hit the ground running. I went out and meet people. I started throwing myself out there. And then I found I did get a very small investor into the business, which allowed me to buy or get one person to start running one part, so then I could go out and to continue to sell, because that's what I knew what I was good at. And if there's anything about starting up your own business is that it teaches you what you are good at and what you're not. And if you're wise enough, you will tune into that and go, right, that's what I'm good at, and everything else I'll get other people to do. So it started up, and then I basically secured, and I said to myself, this was the key to the multi-million-dollar success, was I said, who are the gatekeepers? Who are the gatekeepers that I can get to that have got access to multitudes of customers? Because I don't want to waste my time going one to one to one to one. So what I did was I ultimately tapped into that, and I secured a national contract with a large organisation. I spent more of my time, of quality of time, on a contract that I knew would deliver a lot more for me. That plummeted my success into created this success into the multi-million-dollar business. However, once I got there, I walked in the door, I had 50 staff in under 2 years, multi-million-dollar business, and I had this big warehouse, and we were servicing over 300 different organisations on social media. I walked in and I went, I don't feel successful. This is weird. And I looked around and I'm like, this is society's perception of success. I've got the big thing. It's great for the ego. Oh, yeah, it served it really well. But then I said to myself, but does it feel good? Does it feel right? And I looked at it and I just said, I don't have a connection with my people. I don't have a connection with my staff. I'm not feeling it. And it wasn't my version of success. So I walked away 8 days in Bali with a notepad and a pen again. And I did the reinvention model. I went through that birthing process again that you go through, because you've got to go through pain to get to the next level. And that's pretty much what I did. So, and then I reinvented it, changed the model, had a choice of quality of life, took 2 years off, and now I've sort of recreated a model now, which is, I got sick of teaching the big corporations what to do, how to manipulate their customers, formerly known as people, So I said to myself, I want to bring this back to the grassroots because I believe that it's about the local. We've got to step away from facilitating the elite rich and actually say, well, let's go back local to the people that matter and the people on the ground. And these are the people that have got the most creative ideas. And how do I teach them what I've taught all these big corporations to do, but do it from a heart centre mentality instead? And because of that, it just flows really easy. Someone asked me, what's your rollout plan for digital consciousness, which is the business that I'm doing? And I said, I don't know. I don't have one. I kind of have an idea, but I just decided that I knew that if it was coming from the right place, that everything just falls into place the way it does. And having that unwavering faith is what did it, and that's what did it as well. I mean, you do have to have a bit of a plan, but yeah.
Choosing the playground, I mean, choosing who you wanted to work with and saying these are the people I'm happy with. And in that, just a last question before we come over to John, on the purpose side, on the charity, are you now getting more involved again in that area now that you've redesigned what you're doing?
Well, what I did was with Socialite Media and with my charity, I worked my way out of both of them. So now I'm in a position where I can be more on the business and less in it. Right. And subsequently, I am now starting to because it's now coming from an intrinsic point of view as opposed to it became hard work because I was just hitting the wall all the time and I was working in it so much that eventually I did full board succession, got new members in, reinvigorated it, and I said to them, you know what? I don't care what we do, as long as we help children, teenagers, and women that are disadvantaged. As long as we do that, I don't care how you do it, just go and do it, but make sure it's moral and ethical. And then I let go of that need to be in control of what it was I was doing, and the moment I did that is the moment it flourished.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Very good. You're around, Paul. Cool. So, John, with all the different, because for many people here, one of the biggest challenges is, what do I start, right? And so for all the different companies you've gone in, you've seen different companies where there's challenges of how to get them going, there's challenges to keep them going, there's different amounts you can make, and now you've got a business which is doing like $1 million a month. What would you say was your biggest learning in the whole process in terms of, number one of the biggest pitfalls, right, of which actually is what makes things go wrong if they're not thought through in the right way, and number two, one of the biggest kind of like golden keys that you found to make sure that success can get there, especially when it comes to choosing the right kind of thing to move forward. So kind of on one hand, like what's the thing that you'd say is, hey, you got to watch this because if you don't, these are the kind of things that can go wrong in your experience, and similarly in terms of the most important thing to be watching.
Roger, I'll reverse engineer. I'll start where we are currently at $1 million a month from a business idea that started sitting on the back of the boat at Karnak Island.
We'll talk about that for a moment, right? Like, were you just sitting there and then it was like, oh, we're going to do a concrete company, or?
Yeah, pretty much. No, Paul, my business partner at the time, he was in the industry, and he said, I've got this vision of this plant, and I reckon I know where we can put it, where it'll maximise our value both in the short and longer term. And he had a business plan. He rolled it out to me. I said, look, if you're going to do this, and he said, well, I can't, I haven't got the cash. And I said, well, how about if I can get the cash, I'll go your halves. Handshake deal, done and dusted. I don't know how far into that box of Corona we were at the time. But the next morning, he turned up with what amounted to a dirty great spreadsheet of how we thought it could work. So we spent the next 6 months both working, doing what we were doing. And
you were full-time on another business at the
time? I was consulting at the time, business consulting. It was what I was doing, writing business plans, generally for a living. And this was in 2009, I think, right in the middle of the GFC, and all we needed was a lazy $5 million to get this thing off the ground. Piece of cake, let's go to the bank. Bank hadn't lent a small business startup in Australia, any of the banks, more than $500,000 in the last 2 years, thereabouts. After 3 months of negotiating, we had everything we needed we thought, to start the business. That was where we started. The biggest learning in that, time is your biggest enemy. We took nearly 18 months before we were into production. So to buy it, get it over here, deal with the Chinese, that was in itself a very easy process. They speak very good English when you're buying off them. When you have a technical challenge, the English is not so good. But we knew that when we started. We got no surprises out of that. But I had to go to the Minister for Energy to get our power switched on. And while I'm getting my power on a Sunday morning and being abused uphill and down Dale by some site supervisor that had just been dragged off Hamilton Island to install our power, and we'd been waiting 5 months for, he said, consider yourself lucky, there's people out there who waited 18 months to get their power on. Now, that process hurt us financially, really quite badly. And I had $2 million worth of trucks turn up in July, and we never started in production till December. You know, you can imagine that at finance rates through a bank. You know, that sort of stuff, that really did. A learning, get all your ducks lined up way better than we did. I mean, we're sitting down with the National Australia Bank manager. He said it's the best business plan I've ever seen. Funny, that's what I did for a living. And it turned out to be a bucket of lies anyway. You know, was a great plan. We just didn't put it into practice all that well. And through no fault of our own. When I'd write that plan again, I'd have some much better contingencies into that plan. We just assumed everything would go on the time frames that we were given. So my biggest learning, absolutely, is timing. And being a trader, where I live and die by my timing, I think the timing of starting a business in the GFC was perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. I think the time, if we'd have got cranked up when we did, when we should have, we'd have been financially a lot better off than that sort of 9 or 10 months of delay that we had. And we would have picked up the back end of things like Fiona Stanley Hospital and those sorts of things. But as it turned out, we had our first offer on their table from a multinational 9 months in. By 18 months after we started, we'd sold 50% of our business and kept our management rights to the business, which we still have. So our cash flow challenges are, you know, we've basically got back what we needed, what we put in at the start, and life's taken on a whole new spin.
With the business plan, especially with the bank saying, you know, this is a great business plan, what was it that you were doing different than others that were out there? Because there's obviously, you know, a huge construction boom in the whole of Western Australia, or at least when it comes to like what's going on with the mining and everything like that as well. So what was your niche or the focus you had that allowed you to not just attract the bank's money, but also attract the investor in as well?
We've started to go to the bank. Our research was second to none. Like, we knew exactly what everybody else in the industry was doing. We knew what jobs were coming online in terms of the city work. Our projections out 4 or 5 years have actually turned out to be correct.
So you found the gap, and you said someone's going to have to fill this gap, so why don't we be the ones that do it?
Absolutely. And we brought some technology to Australia that hadn't been used before.
Yeah. By the way, that information, like what's going on in the industry, is that specialist knowledge, or if anyone goes out and does that research, like, because you knew how to put a plan together, you know, I guess he had experience in the industry. Did he have insider knowledge, or was it just?
No, it's not insider knowledge. It's just doing your research.
Right.
You know, all of that stuff is out there. Yeah. And for anybody that's putting a business plan to the bank, they just want to see that you've done your research. And, you know, if most bank managers now don't turn to the back page and look at the bottom line on the P&L. They want to see all the stuff in between. They used to, in the boom, look at the P&L, yep, you got $100,000 profit, we'll lend you $1 million based on that. Not anymore, and especially not then. I mean, they probably do now. They're getting a little more relaxed again. Yeah. But the research is, just do the work. Do the legwork early. Way early.
For anyone looking to the future, as someone who knows what's going on, and the construction always is the first to lead off when it comes to the whole property and everything like that as well, what would you say you're seeing, or you want, or how you positioning yourself going forward in terms of what you see happening next 5, 10 years here in Western Australia?
I think we're probably running a little bit counter-cyclical to the East Coast at the moment. The East Coast is crawling out of a bit of a winter period. We're going into one. I don't think Perth will ever be in, like, as we survive the GFC better than the rest of the world. I think any depressions, slowdowns we have, look, we'll do okay. There's generally enough to make the world go round. So I don't think we're certainly not going to see the boom times that we've seen over the last. If we said that again in my lifetime, I'll be surprised. Having said that, I think that was the second one we've seen in my lifetime, and no one said we'd see it again after the first one. So I just wait till all the economists say it's going to crash and burn, and it should take off any time then.
Yeah. So. Thank you, John. All right. Okay. And Philippa, you're in an industry which has even more predictions than any in terms of like where things are going, which then ends up going in different directions. In your experience, where have you seen the biggest challenges with companies when it comes to their whole data management, and how did you get into that in the first place?
Well, how did I get into it? I think the biggest inspiration for me, I've got this blueprint in my life of, people, key influences, things that have been said that you just keep on the sheet and I'll forever go back to. It's like my bucket list. If I ever need to go and see, if I'm struggling with something, that's where I go. And one of the biggest lessons that I got was from a futurist and a trends person back in the 90s or the late 90s. And she said, her name was Faith Popcorn, and she came up, I don't know if you've ever heard of her, she came up with a report called the Popcorn Report. And it was all about cocooning and, how things were changing and how people wanted to make their homes really cozy, and that was all about cocooning. But one thing that she said that really stuck for me was stick to the knitting. And so that's what I always did. And there's a guy called Simon Sinek, and he says the same thing, right? So you find a gap and you go there, right? And then you also have customers that believe in you. So again, look, I've been blessed that I've worked for Global. I've worked for GEs where, we had that big, we managed to get, black belt processes, and that we had the most dynamic CEO. I've worked for big US globals. And then I had, this was about 4 years ago, I have also been blessed to have amazing coaches, which I have virtual, which actually I outsource everything, literally. This coach said to me once, she had, for years, I'd go to her and she'd go, you need to be on your own. You need to be on your own. And I had this chain around my neck because, it was all so comfortable. The dollars that were coming in, we're earning a lot of money. And the one day I just won the biggest deal in Australia for Microsoft. So the business that I'm in, 80% of our work is Microsoft, and we won the biggest deal with the local government here. And I literally, that's it, I'm done. And I resigned. They hadn't even announced who won it. And I resigned from the US company that I was working for. And
how long ago was that?
That was 2011.
Okay.
Yeah, 2010 or 2011. Anyway, but I had nothing, right? But I just knew that everything, I am the epitome of what's possible. I really am. Because when you actually believe in the subject matter that you're in, and then you take a chance like that and go, you know what? This is just, I don't give a continental whether you buy this from me or not, but if you need it, you need to buy it in order to maintain compliance. And that's my purpose, right? And that's what I'm interested in. So, the fact that you had quotas and you had to report in and, fill out CRMs and all of that, I'm not good at that because I'm a creator. I hate that stuff. So anyway, literally I just went, that's it, I'm done. I started, and do you know what? I had nothing, right? I had amazing clients because I've dealt with all the, the incredible, the Woodsides, the Fortescues of the world, big government. And I went, right, so what do I do now? And they begged me to stay, and I said no. But then I got a 6-month contract, and then I got more work, right? And the thing is that we're in an industry where we don't transact, so we don't sell software where everyone else does. So the thing is, people come to us to benchmark, well, Microsoft is saying this, and my reseller is saying this, so what do you think I should do? So yes, I've been really blessed, and I'm in IT, so I know all about big data, and I know about cloud, and I know about the importance. So, I'm on a high on that already. And, coming to events like this, where you sort of, then that all just aligns. So the thing about email, well, I didn't know that, but I know that email marketing doesn't work for us, right? So now to hear that, and also, your point about kids, I mean, my daughter's on Snapchat all the time, right? There's no way she goes to email.
Yeah.
And I tweeted that, right? I said, yeah, they only do go to that for school. So somehow, how do you, in terms of going forward, events like this is where you just go, all right, now, how do I need, in order to change the business slightly, what I need to embrace? And it's tweaks, right? So it doesn't need to be major, hiring many people, whatever. It's how can I tweak so that I can align myself? And that's what I've had. I mean, one of the trends futurists that I saw on one of the CEO clubs that I was lucky to go to, and this was back in 2007, his prediction was that in 2010, everyone's going to be a subcontractor. So no, you're not actually going to have FTEs. And I think that's my question that I'd love to go through with you is, I don't have FTEs, but I have, virtual people all over the world, which, we hand over work to Europe and, 8 a.m. the next morning, the data's done, right? So we're paying $30 or $20 US versus, $200 Australian dollars here. So, that's
well,
the future.
and on that point, I think it's really interesting because we have a resort and we could not work on contractors with people coming like for a week or subcontracting out. Like it was Brian Tracy when he wasn't talking about online, he was talking about phone calls and says you're never going to be able to get a haircut from your barber on the phone, right? It's kind of like there's certain things that are physical that are in front, but it's very much about the environment. And if you have people that are showing up every day, holding the environment, holding that space, there's always going to be a role for that, which is why even teachers who are shifting from being the one who's trying to teach to the one who's being a guide, there's always that environment, even though they're getting content online and everything like that, which is about that too. And I think it's really interesting because we're all willing to pay more for environment, even though we're paying less for content nowadays as well, right? But in your case, there's that little bit where you went and said, yeah, so I kind of quit it all and a big salary and everything just disappeared. And now you had the clients, right? But what was the pickup point? How long was it before you started earning, and how were you earning? What happened?
Well, immediately, from the day that I was, because the thing is, it just aligns with you. So when you go, you've got that chant, oh, I can't, what about this, what about that? And when one day you just go, I don't care, I'm just going to do it, and it aligns. So, you get that phone call or you get the contract and then you get another one. So,
How long was it after you quit before you were actually earning more from your business than you were earning from your salary?
Well, I'm not earning more yet. But what I am doing, though, is obviously when you have your own business, there's things that, you structure things differently, right? But the discovery, the on the floor, because, I consult and we have people, that are doing the work for us as well that are specialists in this area. So you're getting such interesting discoveries that then you take up. And that's the content that we build, right? So that's why, I wasn't an expert already because I've just kind of focused on that niche. So, you recognize around the world, she's an expert in IT asset management. But what you do is when you just you focus on that area, and then you just, everything around you, the discoveries that you find, that makes you hot, and in terms of the content that you can publish. And then my big thing going forward now is how can we turn some of those services that we're doing into products going forward? Because I know that's all possible. So yes, in terms of the dollars, they're not nearly there yet, but they are there in terms of the way that you're structuring it.
Got it. All right. And in terms of your level of happiness and fulfillment?
So blessed. And the thing is, so much in my life just aligned, right? I was divorced. I was a single mom. I didn't have the nest egg, right? Because it was GFC as well. So, in terms of, I'm living just, the most extraordinary life. And, you wake up and you're on purpose, ready to go. And then you're here, right? So you get to meet these most incredible people, the opportunities that are out. And I think one of the things that I think got, who invited me here was I didn't get the answers that I wanted from Microsoft here in Australia. So I just go, you know what? That's it. I'm flying to the US. I'm going to Microsoft Corporate and I'm going to sit with the global director of software asset management and I'm going to say, okay, what can I not do? And then I'm going off to execute. So that's the other big thing here is, how you mentioned, you just find your key people in your network and you go big, right? As big as you can. And you don't have to have huge, right? But if you just get really targeted in your industry and you go big and you go smart, then, you get the most incredible opportunities. So, I've been able to leverage that so much. I mean, they changed programs because of the feedback that we gave them. This is kind of, here, us in Perth, kind of, me and my team, my virtual team, they listen because we've got such incredible discoveries to share. And it's big dollar savings.
But they also have this kind of sense coming to this country that Australians don't tend to be shy about saying what they really feel.
Yeah. We're very candid. That's what they can appreciate. Yeah. I think I always start that. I go, look, in all due respect, and to be as candid, Philippa, we know.
In all due respect. Oh, really? Yes. But what's really awesome is, I just want to share something that you probably noticed as well, is that each person here has got a very different pathway where they're living their truth, and they don't know the whole story forwards, but they do know they're heading in the right direction, and that isn't always the case. It's very easy. I mean, in each of you've actually shared there's times when that's just not the case as well, and I think that is one of the most fundamental things, is how do you make sure you're in the right playground to do that as well, right? One thing I read recently, which I thought was really interesting, because so many corporates are trying to figure out how do we deal with this whole entrepreneurial, fast-changing culture that we are competing with every single day. We've got these kids showing up, creating billion-dollar businesses that out of nowhere within years. And Amazon has a really great process they have, which is one of their clear management process on any decision that someone makes. If they're going to say yes, they can just say yes, you can do that. If they're going to say no, they actually have to write something like a 5-page report justifying why they're saying no, right? So it's actually institutionalizing entrepreneurship to say, look, if you can't just say no, I'm not going to do that, you're going to have to explain why you're saying no, and yes, you can just say yes, right? And so there's a whole element of how companies are trying to figure out a way to be able to compete, but the power really is with the entrepreneur today, which is what's really interesting. So I'm going to open this up now to the floor. Here's what we're going to do, right? I'm going to think for a moment. If you had a question, any question, and it could be for one of the individual change makers up here, it could be more of a generic question to two of them or to all of them, what would that question be if it was like any question you could ask, which would be the question? Take a moment with the person next to you and share, well, if I had a question to ask, here's what I would want to ask, and here's who I'd want to ask it of, and hear what they have to say as well, and then we'll take a couple of those questions in a moment, right? So I'll give you a minute just to have a conversation and think, what would your question be? All right, go for it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for sharing. Wow, we've got a hand up already. There's a hand right over in that corner there. So we're going to bring a microphone over, and we'll take a number of questions. When you ask a question, begin by just sharing who you are, and just what your name is, and then you can go. And then if you have it for a particular person, say who it's for, and then ask the question. Right. So your name is.
My name is Daphne Masters.
Delphi.
Daphne.
Daphne
Masters.
All right. So can we give Daphne a round of applause for sharing? Thank you, Daphne.
Each one of you spoke about what you were really good at, what your purpose was, what your idea was. From the time that you had that idea and that purpose the time lag to then when you executed and went along with it. Could you give us any advice? Say, I've got a dream now, when should I execute it? There we go.
Straight away. Don't waste any time.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that, like you, Nick, at 4 years old, you knew that you were going to be an astronaut. Were there any times in between that you thought, no, I probably couldn't have done this, and when you probably would have? Because I ask this because I've come across many people who've said, I had a dream at this age, and 20 years later they didn't act on it. Whereas for me, a vision just came 12 months ago, and immediately I started acting on it. So, is there
With
any
dreams,
advice?
yeah, definitely. Great question, by the way. Just with anything, when it comes to dreams, just never allow anybody else's opinion to define your reality, but always change the polarity to everything you hear in life. I mean, and I'll give a perfect example, like at age 4, I wanted to become an astronaut. It was one of those boyhood things, like, I was the kind of kid, like, I didn't have a Lamborghini post on my bedroom wall. It was a photo of Neil Armstrong and Yuri Gagarin, one of the first, the first humans to represent humanity, in other words. And I'll give you a perfect example. To become an astronaut, you need perfect vision. Now, because I never actually went to school until age 10 because I was medically confined to my bedroom, chronic allergies, debilitating asthma, so I read a lot of books. My first teacher, my mentor, was the Encyclopedia Britannica. So I grew up on the Britannica. If anybody wants to test me on the Britannica, I know every page, I can recite it verbatim. I am a product of the... But doing so, I damaged my eyes. I had serious astigmatism at a crazy diopter level. So in my quest to become an astronaut, this is back in the days of the Soviet Union, back in the mid-1980s. And mind you, I'm still a teenager here. I had a revolutionary surgery which has only been done on very few individuals. Has anybody had laser surgery? Just a show of hands. Anybody had laser surgery? Okay, well, 20 years before laser surgery, I was your guinea pig. Because back then, they carved into your eye, flattened the curvature of your cornea, and drilled 8 holes into your retina. I have 16 holes, and I had perfect vision overnight. All because of my quest. So in other words, I wasn't going to give into life. You've got to have to cut every sign of retreat. And if you want to do something, you've got to emotionalize it, embed the emotions, and have other individuals hold you accountable to achieving that. So I did whatever it took. For example, when I approached NASA, I had no tertiary qualifications. NASA said no, because NASA was preoccupied about me having letters after my name. Instead, I went to the Russians, who were more interested in zeros after your name. Who follows, yes? So once again, it's like, I hustled out there. I'm a very good negotiator, very entrepreneurial, but I did whatever it took, and I made it work. And I also drafted a screenplay to my young child too, and I've been accountable to those goals. Who wrote those goals? A child, and that child is still in me. I'm the student, but the child in me is my mentor, because kids have vision where they challenge everything. Where as adults, what do? We're a lot more statement orientated, and we're a system of what? Conditioning, and their stereotypical behaviour, whatever too. So yeah, just you do whatever it takes, cut every sign of retreat, but ultimately, never obligate yourself to anybody but yourself.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, let's take a question from the lady here in the black. And your name is?
Hi, I'm Shelley, and I'm a star. Thought I'd put that out there. Come on, we're stars, we know that. Come on. My question is...
Oh, you got a question as well.
I do. Well, I could come up there, but, I could talk all day being a star. My question is, what if you have lots of talents and how to know which one to put them in? Being a star, I have so many things that I'm good at, so how do you refine the product of something you love and you're passionate about and what has heart and have meaning and feeling? And a child, I've got so many, how to put it into one product or go on to, say, doing one thing and not the others?
Okay, so whoever would like to take that on, and if you'd like to make a distinction as well between being good at lots of things and thinking you're good at lots of things, that's also a good distinction too. But do you want to take that?
I think one of my mentors once said is, there's lots of things you're good at, but what's the one thing that you could probably make the most money from? So, I love yoga, right? And often I go, I just want to be an instructor or whatever, but I know that I'm better in this area. So that's something that you do, but it's not something that, you work on or that your business is in. Or you could, ultimately have an interest in that, but you just try and get a laser focus on the one thing that probably excites you the most, where you see the most sustainability, in terms of long term, what's that one going to be?
Okay. Thank you.
Just wanted to share something on top of that. The average individual has 2 or 3 things they're particularly good at. So find the one where you can add the most immense value. So in other words, if you can value factor your client's life, then that's also reciprocal in relation to the amount of revenue you can also generate too. So add more value to others, which is a good barometer in relation to determining which one is the right thing for you too. And also, it's got to drive you. You have to be passionate about it too. And which one are you really emotionalising most? And can you monetize it? That's really important.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's take a question from this side over here, the gentleman in the checks.
Hi, my name's Jeff Muir, and I don't think I'm a star, but I'm somewhere around that area, yeah? So my question is, I'm about to do an investor pitch and raise capital for my business, and there's 2 questions I have for you. One is, how do I get an appointment with you to do that? And that's one of the reasons I stood up to ask that question, because now you know who I am. So I've also bought an appointment, so that's sort of another level up. I've bought some time. I guess that the struggle I'm having at the moment is really sharpening up the pitch to exactly articulate what it is that I do that will be the whiffum for you or for someone like you. And that's
what kind of business is it?
I've got an online learning platform.
Okay.
And it's a blended learning, teaching accountability and responsibility to maintain culture in organisations and build and grow it. So that's essentially it. And I have trouble articulating that into a whiffum.
Got it. So the first thing first, as this is more of a changemaker forum, I'm going to excuse myself for answering that question. Having said that, obviously you've answered it already because we are going to be meeting, so that's good. And the second thing is I'm going to throw it over to John, because there is also a distinction. John had 2 things happen, right? There was one where there was a pitch which was a partnership pitch, which was his partner, which was getting him involved. And the second one was the banker's pitch. Well, actually, there's 3. There's the bank's pitch, and then obviously the investor's pitch, because they came on board as well. What would you share with Jeff is like for you the most important things to be looking at?
Jeff, I would suggest if you don't understand what you're doing and you can't articulate it, it's too complicated. Okay? It's too complex. If you can narrow it down, simplify it, break it down one thing at a time. We're intrinsically bored if things get too complex beyond our level of comprehension. If Roger stood up here and spoke Chinese for 5 minutes, everybody would switch off. Okay? Because they don't understand it. He's saying the same thing, but we don't understand it, so everybody switches off. So if you haven't got it to a point where you can't articulate it, you haven't broken it down into simple enough steps yet. Okay? Typical boffin speak. Right? People that are really, really good at what they do, really well educated, would love to sit around with their mates in the collegiate and talk boffin. Great. But when it comes to talking to normal people, don't get across that they don't understand. They're never going to buy in until you can own the simplification of it. All right? You keep it simple, it'll work.
Can I just say something? Do you know the other thing I heard once was ask your kids, or ask kids to say, what does Dad do? And see what they respond, because that is like, simplified, personified. Yeah.
Yeah. but have a thick skin. When I started my YouTube channel, I was like focusing to try and get to the first 5,000 subscribers, and I got to 5,000. I was like, oh, I got to 5,000. And I was sitting at the dinner table, and my son Luke's looking at me, and he's like, Dad, you look all happy. And I go, yeah, today we got to 5,000 subscribers. And he's like, come back to me when you got 1 million. Yeah. Yeah, kids have a whole different like scale of what they used to.
And an adult wouldn't say that, only a child would.
Exactly. Okay, awesome. Let's take another question. We'll take a question from this lady here.
Hi, my name's Clara. I have a question for Tennille, but I'd love your input as well. I was wondering, how do you reconcile with your Global Good organisation the desire to be helping and giving and looking after and that kind of caring mentality with the entrepreneur mindset and needing to make money and wanting to have a successful business?
Yeah, good question. I learnt the hard way. I went broke and I went, oh, okay, this is not right. There's something I'm not doing right. Something that I am starting to experiment with, because I sit on a number of boards around Australia now and sort of, you know, holding the flag for women on boards and diversity in that, and young women especially as well. So I had to get to the point where I said to myself, I am of no use to my organisation or to the good that I want to do and I desire to do in the world if I cannot look after myself first. It's not about being self-centred, it's about centering yourself. You've got to centre yourself first, so then you are able, physically, mentally, spiritually, to be able to do the work and still have the passion to do it. Because if you start to make, and then it becomes a job, and when it becomes a job, you lose the passion, and then everything you've ever tried to do is gone. You know, and I almost got to that point. I almost walked away, and I have done a number of times where I've just pushed myself to the edge, actually twice hospitalised because I worked so hard. And someone said to me, you know what? It doesn't matter how successful you are or how much good work you do. You're going to be sitting in your hospital bed and going, look at how successful I am, everyone. You know, so it is really a true essence of self. All it comes down to is your self-worth. I am worthy enough. I know that I'm going to be. I always said I'd be an amazing millionaire because I'd just give it all away. I'm great, but I wouldn't give all of it away. I would then now my head mentality is, well, how do I multiply that? How I might put it into something and create something that creates more money so it's a residual income and then it pays it and goes on forever. So it's about that just shift in perception, but it's a true subconscious level of how do I value myself? Because I know that I am a good-hearted person. All I want to do is go out and do good in the world and shine my light. But I can't shine that light brightly enough if I do not sit there within myself, look after myself, and also look at it like a business, because charitable organisations, whilst it's great in the community, they are a business, the only way it's going to work. But my overall goal in doing any of the good work that I've done, I want to put myself out of business. I don't want that job. I want to be able to create the charity so much so that we all go out of business. Whereas in the government and in many institutions, they want to keep themselves in a job. So they create this complex solution to keep themselves and justify why they're in a job. And I'm like, no, I want to get out of the job. That's the whole purpose of us doing it in the first place. So it is a really fine-tuned balance about that heart and head logic and being able to also quantify that into how am I going to break up my time. So what I do on practical levels is I say, right, the community work I do is X percentage. That's what I do. Anyone else comes up to me to ask for me to do stuff, I'm like, sorry, I'm already doing the best that I can within the realms that I've got. I've only got 2 hands. I do genuinely want to do more, but I've still got to live. And the other thing was the perception of money. So what I said to myself was, yes, money is like breathing, right? You get up in the morning, you breathe, you don't think about it, and it should be like this. You don't think about it. It's for survival. It's part of this dictates, part of the matrix system that we're in. But what you've got to be able to do is understand that it is part of breathing. So, it's not your purpose. You just get up and breathe. You don't think about it. If you are getting up in the morning and making yourself say to yourself, I must breathe in order to live, that's where you've got it wrong. So what I've done is change my perception to that, making it not my purpose. I know that I need it in order to survive in the dictated system that we've got. And it's about outsmarting the system and doing that. So that's where I started to go, well, in order for me to do the work I really want to do in the community, I have to go and build my own organisation so I can make a residual income so then I can go back and do all of this work. That was the choice I had to make. And the only reason why I did that was because I took myself out of it and I said to myself, what is in the best interest of the organisation, not me? And that was sort of the trick of, hopefully there's some practical tools there for you.
Thank you, that's great.
Thank you, Tanil. We are going to take one final question. We're going to take from the lady who's jumping up and down over there.
To get to a bigger audience.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Sky.
Hi, Sky.
I'm a creator, another one. To find investors or someone to help you, you obviously need to get to a celebrity or a person who's with a gatekeeper, like you said. How do you approach them? How do you organise it so that you can get bigger contacts and raise your level of person that you're dealing with?
So first of all, there's an assumption in there, which is in order to be able to get to the next level, you need to find someone at that. Does anyone want to respond to that? Are there other ways to get started? Yeah?
Okay.
You don't need a celebrity,
Okay.
okay? If you want to get to the gatekeepers, you be better prepared than everybody else. Now, I'm a trader. I'm guilty as charged. So planning and preparation, anything prior to that doesn't exist. So that's apologies to the creators in the world. If you want to get to the people that make the decisions, be the best planned, the best researched person, so they have no reason not to talk to you.
Right.
Okay? If you are there, if you've got everything, all your ducks lined up, they will talk to you. Now, you've got to be persistent and keep going. But if you go there, and excuse the half-assed, then you'll get one shot at it and you won't get another one. But if you go there and you can put everything on the table that they need, not what you think they need, but they need, and that comes down to your research, you'll always get there eventually.
Okay.
So can I say also, when I started my practice, I didn't have a nest egg, right? And I still, I didn't have an investor either. And I've self-funded and we've been profitable every year. So, from a dollars point of view, you don't need that initially. And then in terms of in terms of finding that person, it's the research as well. As you go, well, if I connect with him, and this is a perfect forum to find those people as well. And then also take action. So if someone says, you should talk to so and so, then give it a go and just try it on.
And then that'll lead to another person and another person.
Yep.
Okay.
First of all, you are the celebrity, you are the rock star. Out of 1 billion sperm cells, you won the gold medal. Congratulations.
Okay.
But ultimately, what you need to do too is also solidify your foundation, work your brand. What's so unique about you? What's your legacy? What's your body of work? In other words, as you build your brand, you're illuminating yourself, okay? So as you build your brand, what you're doing now, you're amplifying your signal, you're amplifying your opinion, your product, your services, and that's how you start to forge yourself in relation to differentiating yourself in the marketplace. And whilst everybody else is drowning in a sea of sameness, you start to stand out by doing the exact polar opposite at all times.
So you build yourself as the astronaut.
Yeah, you're the authority. I mean, it's like for me, I'm not just an astronaut. I mean, it's like, it depends what day of the week you ask me what I am, but it's like, I'm an entrepreneur, but I live life my own terms. I'm a 5-day weekend lifestyle strategist, and I'm all about living a life as opposed to dying at 21 and being buried at 75. Like, it's all about living out loud at all times.
Yeah.
But congratulations.
Okay, thanks.
I would probably just suggest another thing as well is try looking outside of the box, and instead of the box, kick it out the door and find a circle and go to something else. What about crowdfunding? If you've got an opportunity you want to be able to do, go online, create a crowdfunding project. There's also internationally, there's crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding as well, so you can find investors like the Dragon's Den, but not in Australia yet. But it's just about, hop online and see what other ways you can raise money. And I've seen some amazing projects, on crowdfunding. I'm writing a course on that at the moment, on how to do crowdfunding marketing. But how do you do that for yourself to be able to then get your project? If you find you're coming up against any roadblocks with, the traditional version of getting investors, go the other way.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, did you notice that each of the changemakers actually had a very different answer to each other, and some of them actually contradict each other. And we're like, yeah, that's all really great. It's like, what? No. But they're all following their natural path of what's the natural answer and obvious answer for them. It's like, well, do I fold left over right? Do I fold right over left? Which way do I do it? It's like, well, do it this way because that's what I do. And here's the point. The point is that each of them you can see have a very high level of certainty in terms of where they are. Something you heard this from John, you heard this from Nick, credibility, right? Which is a level, credibility is your external trust. Is how much do people trust you on something? And so, a trader will go through definitely researching, getting it all out so it's just so credible, people go, wow, right? Someone like Nick would actually do it very much around the people he knows. I mean, just going to speak to the Russians, knowing already Peter Diamandis can make all that difference already to them opening the door as well. So remember, credibility is something where until you have that, it's very difficult to get going because people aren't going to take you seriously anyway. And then confidence, this whole idea of confidence, which is your internal trust in yourself. There's nothing more damaging than losing your own confidence, and we've all been there. We've all been there, and you've heard stories up here of what happens when that happens, and it's like, what do you do at that point when you lose the confidence? To do what? To get it back again, right? Which is a really critical part to all of this. And if you have those two things, then the certainty is something that just grows and grows and grows because credibility leads to confidence, leads to credibility, leads to confidence. But start wherever you happen to be, because the moment you overshoot it, you lose not just confidence, you lose credibility as well, right? Which is exactly what you're hearing as well, which I think is awesome. So what I'm going to do is give each of the changemakers a chance to just share a final word. Whatever would be one final thing you'd like to just leave with everyone here, because this has been an awesome session. I'll start with you, Tanil. What would be final word for you?
I would say that the only person in life that is going to limit you to what you're doing is yourself. Do not sacrifice the things in life that, bargain away your security for doing what you love, because we only have really one shot at that. And also to observe. Watch yourself. Be your own guinea pig. How am I reacting? How am I reacting on a conscious and a subconscious level? Watch yourself, observe, and constantly refine the version that is you. And that's all.
Thank you. Nick.
I would say pretty much filter out all the negativity in your life, Start to set the parameters as to who you invite into your life. And if you want to go to the next level, just pre-qualify everybody that you meet in relation to their value, but also just the energy they also give up to, because you're the most qualified person in the world. You're the most unique individual, so protect that at all times.
Thank you.
I think my big aha to you would be just believe and leave. Believe in what it is that you want to do and the life that you want to live, and then leave and just trust and just notice what comes up when you're living that life. And also for all of those that do want to start their own, or they've got the idea like Daphne had, just don't worry about the how. That's the big thing for me, because that was always my stop. Like, oh, but how, who? It's just this is what I'm going to do, and what's my why? That's the big thing as well. Why am I doing this? Because people buy, why. They buy you and they buy why you're doing it. They don't care about the how.
Good, thank you.
I've often considered what the definition of success is. And this morning my phone rang at 5 o'clock. The boys are at work to say we'd been broken into last night. We'd had half a dozen trucks trashed, probably done $80,000, $90,000 worth of damage overnight. Now insurance will cover the bulk of that. I said, do you need me to come in? And he said, no, we've got it. Guess what? I'm now a success. Okay? Because I'm not needed anymore. Okay? The boys don't need me. One last thing, do or do not, there is no try. Okay?
So I want to ask you all to give a huge round of applause to our 4 changemakers for an awesome session. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Awesome. Good job. Thanks very much. Thank you. Take a moment with the person next to you and share what's the biggest thing you took out of that session. What's the biggest learning for you? Have a conversation with someone next to you while we reset the stage. All right. What would it be? Can we get some music on, Shane? We got some music on?
travel. Darling, I will be loving you till we're 70. And baby, my heart could still fall as hard at 23. And I'm thinking about how people fall in love in mysterious ways. Maybe just the touch of a hand. Well, me, I fall in love with you every single day. And I just wanna tell you I am. So honey, now take me into your loving arms. Kiss me under the light of 1,000 stars. Place your head on my beating heart. I'm thinking out loud. Maybe we found love right where we are. When my hair's all but gone and my memories fade, and the crowds don't remember my name. When my hands don't play the strings the same way, I know you will still love me the same. 'Cause honey, your soul could never grow old, it's evergreen. And baby, your smile's forever in my mind and memory. I'm thinking about how people fall in love in mysterious ways. And maybe it's all part of a plan. Well, I'll just keep on making the same mistakes, hoping that you'll understand. But baby, now take me into your loving arms. Kiss me under the light of 1,000 stars. Place your head on my beating heart. I'm thinking out loud. Maybe we found love right where we are.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. So one thing you would have noticed from our change makers, and I believe most of our change makers are going to be around this afternoon, there's going to be an action break coming up where you're going to have a chance to connect in, because each of them are doing some pretty amazing things. And so definitely, if there's anyone there you'd really love to have a chance to speak to more, then hopefully they'll be around at the break as well. But there was one thing you might have noticed. You might have noticed that when you heard Nick, for example, say that I had to go, like he didn't go to the, what would it be called, the Australian Space Agency. He didn't start from Australia. He started by saying, who do I need to connect with around the world? And he went to Russia, right? Or, you know, if you hear the story, you know, of John who had to go out to China, or even the story of, you know, Philip who went all the way to America. It's like in every case, it's like, where do we need to go to get the answers here? And this leads to the next wave. So I'm going to share a couple of pretty amazing videos of things that have happened just again in the last 4 or 5 months, things we were predicting would happen, but I had no idea they would happen this fast. And this is a wave which is number 3, all about this idea of one global village. And the word village sounds like a small thing. This is not some massive big thing. It's a small thing where everyone gets to know everyone else. So why is this wave